Hello and welcome to a look at Fury of the Furries, game that was released by Mindscape. The plot of this game is that apparently the furries are quite mischievous individuals with a bizarre sense of humor. Some of it innocent and some of it not quite so innocent. But they send out a research exploration science vessel thing in order to invade Earth and cause trouble there. But for various reasons the mission is aborted, and on return the Tinies which has been sent out find that things have changed for the worse. While they've been away, the king has decided that having all that mischievous behavior is not exactly ideal, so a machine is created that will convert the Tinies into more sociable creatures. As you can probably gather, a lot of individuals might not find that particularly interesting, exciting, or welcome, and as on luck would have it, the most devious of all the Tinies decides that the king should probably take a well-deserved rest in the castle's dungeon, and then the wicked one, slightly not named, uses a machine to convert the other Tinies into various monsters of various types. On returning, one of the Tinies from the ship, of course, goes out and sets himself upon the daunting task of trying to free the king from the castle dungeon and getting rid of the usurper in the process, making everyone happy. Now, Tinies, they look a bit like a dust ball, and they do move like balls, which means that they have some bouncing and rebounding going on, a bit like the game Eyeball on the Commodore 64, but just less extreme and more controlled. The Tiny has access to 4 different colors, and depending on the color, the Tiny will have certain abilities. If you quickly look at the interface, you can see in the bottom left side you have the 4 indicators. They are not all lit because not all colors are available for all screens. And then in the middle you have the timer, which can be more or less generous. And then further to the right you have the bonus count and the lives count. The 4 different colors. The yellow one allows tiny thing. It's not named. Don't know if to give it a name. Relevant. But the yellow Tiny can throw, cast, toss, whatever, fireballs, which of course is very, very useful for getting rid of enemies, and it is supposedly immune to fire, which is something I never got to check. The red color allows the Tiny to pass through the soft rocks, and that becomes very, very important and very, very useful on certain screens, of course. The green color is probably the most exciting, most enjoyable, and technically most useful, which is basically attaching a line to Tiny and allowing the Tiny to bungee jump, ninja rope kind of thing through the different levels in order to reach inaccessible points and navigate traps and dangers and all that kind of stuff. The blue color allows Tiny to breathe underwater and swim, which is useful, and also fire off some bubbles which are surprisingly damaging towards underwater enemies. Now you can probably begin to notice that there is a certain similarity between this game and certain other game types, not the games themselves but more their concepts. You can't help but feel that there's a touch of Lost Vikings and a touch of Lemmings at the same time going on in this game. But the way it's done is surprisingly clever. The clever part of this game is the fact that instead of having multiple individuals to control, you control one individual who can chop and change between the different abilities as they are needed or potentially helpful. Because something I thankfully noticed early on in the game was that It doesn't apply to all levels, but for some levels, while it looks like you technically need one specific color, you can actually get away with not having access to it, because as I was saying earlier, you don't always have access to all the colors. Certain levels will contain color fields of a certain color, and if you pass through that, you will obtain the color that you're missing. But if you pass through it again, you will lose it again. So some of them has to be accessed from knocking through the ground with the red color in order to get through the color field as a one-way thing, so you don't lose the color again. All the colorizations of the Tiny can push blocks and pull blocks and jump very, very high, as you've probably seen one point or another. By continuously jumping, you will gain more and more height too, obviously at a certain point. So the colors basically only dictate what special abilities Tiny has. The game is very, very generous. When you start a new game and you have a save slot, it actually also saves the game after every 5 levels. So if you game over and you go back to that game you were using, it will have a 5 level checkpoint somewhere, and you just have to hope that you didn't die on the 4th level, and game over, I would say, on the 4th level just before a new checkpoint. But it is something that definitely encourages you to carrying on and get steady progress. Let's talk all the technical stuff. Graphics wise, I think this game looks brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Bear in mind what type of game it is. You don't necessarily want a huge modern boss in a Western setting. That will probably look a bit out of place, and sometimes you do find game graphic designers trying too hard to make things look epic, and I think the graphics in this game specifically, it works extremely well. It looks brilliant for what it needs to be, and everything is very detailed, and everything's got a certain tone to it that I quite enjoy. The graphics themselves move very, very smoothly. I know that the Tiny can catch up to almost the side of the screen, which I'm not normally the biggest fan of, but I understand it is to convey a sense of moving so fast that the screen can't catch up. Not in a technical limitation sense, but in a deliberate sense of giving you a sense of speed. The sound effects are very, very satisfying by and large. There's one or two of them that I'm maybe not the biggest fan of, but I do find the sound effects to be very, very fitting for the game and very, very enjoyable. Unfortunately, the sound effect I enjoy the most is the one you don't want to listen to, which of course is the balloon-like pop when the Tiny dies. It sounds epic. Music, it is suited extremely well for the game, at least for what I experienced of the game. It is fitting in quite well. It doesn't deafen you, and it doesn't seem out of place, and the quality and composition in general is very, very high, and I love the music. It may not be for everyone, but this is the kind of music that I find very, very enjoyable. It's present without being dominant, and it fits the game it belongs to. The controls are sharp, which they need to be in a game like this, because you are in direct control of the Tiny when it has the different abilities, which means that specifically when you are swinging with the line thing, certain levels you need a hyper precision, and only you, the player, can provide that, and thankfully the controls are allowing you to be hyper precise. Once or twice I felt the control slipped away from me, but considering the fact that I played this game for over 3 hours, I don't think that's an issue. The same thing goes for hit detection. There was once or twice when it felt a bit hypersensitive, but again, not an issue. What I will say about Fury of the Furries even is that for someone who normally doesn't like the puzzle game genre, I absolutely adore this game. Well worth the play if you get the chance to do so. Thanks for watching, take care, see you next time, bye bye for now.